Have you ever stopped to think why some people can learn a new skill in just a matter of days, while others struggle for years and still feel completely stuck, unable to make real progress despite all the time they invest? It's not talent, even though that's what most people like to believe when they compare themselves to others. It's not intelligence, despite how often people use that as an excuse to justify slow progress or lack of results. And it's definitely not luck, even if it sometimes feels like certain people were simply born with an advantage. The real difference comes down to something almost nobody ever takes the time to truly understand or apply in a consistent way. A system, a structured way of learning that compresses time and forces your brain to adapt much faster than it normally would under comfortable conditions. And today, you're about to understand exactly how that system works in practice. Because here's the truth that most people either ignore or never even realize in the first place. You don't actually need more time to learn something effectively. What you really need is better pressure, the kind that forces your brain to operate at a higher level. Think about this for a moment. If I gave you 6 full months to learn a new language, what do you honestly think would happen during that period? You would probably procrastinate, telling yourself there is always more time later. You would end up watching random videos that feel productive, but don't actually move you forward. You would study in a very loose way, without urgency, without focus, and without a clear outcome. Now imagine a completely different scenario where you only had 48 hours, and after that, you were forced to survive using only that language. Suddenly everything changes in a dramatic way. Your brain wakes up almost instantly. Your focus sharpens to a level you're not used to. You stop wasting time on irrelevant things. That's not motivation driving you. That's survival mode taking over your behavior. And survival mode is the fastest learning state your brain is capable of entering. Question becomes clear. How do you trigger that state on demand without needing a real emergency? How do you access that level of focus and urgency whenever you want? Let me show you how. First, you need to understand something absolutely critical about how learning actually works. Learning is not about consuming information endlessly as most people assume. It's about forcing your brain to retrieve and apply what it has been exposed to. Most people unknowingly do the exact opposite of what works. They watch content, they read material, they highlight important sections. They feel productive in the moment. But in reality, nothing truly sticks in their memory. Why does that happen? Because passive learning creates the illusion of progress without producing real results. Active pressure, on the other hand, creates tangible improvement that you can actually measure. So step 1 is surprisingly simple, but incredibly powerful. You need to flip the entire process. Instead of asking yourself, what should I study right now? You start asking, what should I be able to do within the next 48 hours? This small shift changes everything, because now you are no longer chasing abstract knowledge. You are chasing output, something concrete and visible. Let's say you want to learn video editing as an example. Most people start by watching tutorials for hours, jumping from one video to another without a clear direction. But after 2 full days, they still haven't edited a single real project from start to finish. Now compare that to a different approach. You give yourself a challenge that cannot be ignored. In 48 hours, I will publish 1 fully edited video. Now your brain has a target that is impossible to misunderstand. A deadline that creates urgency. A constraint that forces focus. And suddenly every piece of information you consume has a specific purpose. You're no longer learning randomly. To complete the task. That's step 1. Define a brutal and extremely clear outcome. Now we move to step 2. Compression. This is where you remove everything that does not directly contribute to your goal. No extra theory. No unnecessary deep dives into topics that won't help you right now. Only the 20% of knowledge that produces 80% of the results. This is exactly where most people fail without even realizing it. Because they confuse completeness with effectiveness. They think they need to understand everything before they can do anything. But that's not true. You don't need to master everything at once. You only need to master what matters first. Imagine trying to learn how to play the guitar. Do you really need to understand advanced music theory within the first 48 hours? Or do you simply need to learn 3 basic chords that allow you to play real songs immediately? The answer is obvious, but most people still choose the more complicated path. Because it feels safer. Because it feels like what real learning should look like. But real learning is not comfortable. It's messy, it's fast, and it's extremely focused. Now here's where things become even more interesting. Step 3 is where real transformation begins to happen. Feedback loops. Fast, constant, and sometimes brutal feedback. Because your brain does not improve through repetition alone. It improves through correction. If you keep repeating the same mistakes, you reinforce failure over time. But if you correct those mistakes quickly, you accelerate your growth dramatically. So instead of practicing without direction, you test yourself constantly. You try, you fail, you adjust, and then you try again. Over and over. Think about how children learn to speak. Don't start by studying grammar rules. They start by trying to communicate. They get corrected, they try again, and within a relatively short period, they become fluent. That is not a coincidence. That is one of the most natural and effective learning systems that exists. And you can use that exact same system. Now let's talk about something that most people completely underestimate. Your environment, your surroundings directly shape your level of focus. And your focus determines your results. If you try to learn something while checking your phone every few minutes, you are not actually learning. You are fragmenting your attention. And attention is your most valuable resource. So during these 48 hours, you need to create isolation. Not permanently, just temporarily. You remove distractions. You build a space where your only real option is progress. Because when there's nothing else competing for your attention, your brain stops resisting and starts adapting. Now here's a powerful mental shift. Instead of thinking, I need more discipline, start thinking, I need fewer choices. Because discipline requires constant effort and energy, but structure makes things easier. When the path is clear, you follow it naturally. When it is unclear, you hesitate. And hesitation destroys momentum. So design your environment in a way that eliminates hesitation completely. Everything ready, everything simple, everything focused. Now let's go even deeper. There is a hidden layer behind all of this. Identity. If you see yourself as someone who is trying to learn, you will naturally move slower. But if you see yourself as someone who executes quickly and decisively, your behavior changes immediately. Because identity drives action. So during these 48 hours, you adopt a new identity. Not a beginner. You are not someone exploring without direction. You are someone who delivers results. Even if those results are imperfect. Especially if they are imperfect. Because perfection is the enemy of speed, and speed is your greatest advantage. Now think about this carefully. In 48 hours, you are not trying to become world-class. You are trying to become dangerous. Dangerous enough to produce something real. Dangerous enough to improve continuously. Dangerous enough to stand out from the average person who never even starts. And that alone already puts you ahead of most people. Now let's break a common myth. Learning takes time. That is not entirely true. Mastery takes time, but basic competence can happen very quickly. If you focus correctly, if you compress the process, if you execute without hesitation. So instead of asking how long will this take, start asking how fast can I get usable results. That is the real game. Now here's something powerful to understand. Urgency creates clarity. When time is limited, your brain automatically prioritizes what matters most. You stop overthinking. You stop doubting yourself. You start acting. And action creates feedback. Feedback creates improvement. Improvement builds confidence. And confidence fuels even more action. It becomes a loop. And once you enter that loop, everything starts to accelerate. Now imagine applying this system to different areas of your life. Learning a new skill, starting a side project, understanding a complex topic. Instead of dragging it out for months or even years, you attack it within 48 hours. You build momentum quickly, and momentum is addictive, because once you experience fast results, you never want to go back to slow learning again. Now let me ask you something important. What is one thing you have been saying you want to learn for months, but still haven't started? Why hasn't it happened yet? Be honest with yourself. It is not because you lack time. It is because you lack intensity. And intensity is always a choice. So here is what you do next. You pick one skill, only one, not 5, not 10, just one. You define a clear outcome. You compress the input. You create pressure. And then you execute relentlessly for 48 hours. At the end of that period, you do not ask, did I master this completely? You ask, can I actually use this now? Because usefulness is what truly matters, not perfection. Now here's where most people get surprised. After those 48 hours, you will feel different. More confident, more capable, more in control of your own progress, because you proved something to yourself. That you can learn quickly, that you can adapt under pressure, that you are not stuck. And that belief changes everything. Because once you truly believe you can learn anything, you stop fearing new challenges. You start chasing them. And that is how people transform their lives. Not slowly over decades, but through moments of intense, focused action. Now let's take this even further. What if you repeated this process consistently? Every single week, every single month, with different skills and different challenges. Imagine where you would be in just 1 year. Not average, not stuck. That is the real power of this system. It is not just about 48 hours. It is about changing the way you approach learning for the rest of your life. Now here is the final piece you cannot ignore. Commitment. Because everything you just heard only works if you actually apply it. Not if you think about it. Not if you plan endlessly without action. But if you do it, if you start immediately, right now, you pick something, you define the outcome, you set the timer, and you go all in. Because the biggest difference between people who succeed and those who do not is not knowledge, it is action. So the real question is simple. What are you going to do in the next 48 hours? Because that decision might change everything.